and welcome to Round Robin. I'm your host, Robin McCormick, and today we're going to talk a little bit about a community event that was held recently, a basketball tournament, in an effort to really draw attention to youth problems and stem the tide of youth violence. My guest is Sean Slaughter. Welcome, Sean.
Thank you, Robin.
Now, you chair a group called Men of Valor,
Yes.
and I thought to myself, I have not heard of that group until recently, and that's because you just formed recently.
That's because it's brand new.
How did that come about?
Will Moffitt held a call to action at Y.H. Thomas after all the violence was happening, all the events that happened in Hampton. And at that event, myself and some other men were there, and we voiced our opinion pretty strong about what needed to be done. And most of us were already doing things in the community. I have an organization called Life Power Music Mentoring, and some of the other gentlemen had different organizations. And so Councilman Will Moffitt called us together and said, hey, let's sit at a round table and let's see what happens. And we sat at a round table and said, we need to do something. How can we get people to come together? And that's where the idea of the basketball tournament started, and that's where the Men of Valor formed.
Now, I'm going to ask you, why basketball? How does basketball at all relate to the problem of violence?
That's a great question. How do you get people out of the house, really is the question. Whether it's with violence or any other type of thing, how do we get people to engage them? Because most people, to be honest, they'll talk about the problem, they'll complain about the problem, and they want to see something done, but generally speaking, it's hard to get people out and coming together. Because basketball is such a huge event in this area, sports in general.
Sports, right.
It's a big sports town. We said, well, people come out to watch their kids play, right?
Yeah, that's where you see crowds on a Saturday, right?
Absolutely.
At the football fields, at the soccer fields.
It's nothing but families.
Yeah.
Nothing but families. So we said, let's do one better. Let's not only engage youth to play basketball, let's have the police form a team, the sheriff form a team, Parks and Rec form a team, the fire form a team. And so we had 8 adult teams, we had 8 youth teams. And so, number one, there was a statement there that we had community organizations, we had the city involved with the police and the fire and so forth, and then we had Boys and Girls Club, and we had all these different teams playing each other. So that was a statement. The second thing was, they came out to watch. So you might go to one side and the police are playing the firemen. There's nothing but cops and firemen on that side.
Oh, yeah.
Then you have the Boys and Girls Club maybe playing Parks and Rec, and you see nothing but families. And so it was a big family event. And so the basketball really was just the hook to catch the fish. During the event, we had sessions that they can attend on gang violence, on family. We also had vendors there. My organization was there along with maybe 15 to 17 other organizations that dealt with violence prevention, that dealt with family, that dealt with mentoring, so on and so forth. So that was, let's get them in the building, let's let them enjoy a game, see if we can watch a game where there's no violence, but let's also offer them materials. So either A, if they say, hey, I'm upset about the violence, what can I do? Where there are 17 vendors here that are right in your city that you can be involved in. You can volunteer, you can put a hand in. Or if you are somebody that has unfortunately been a part of violence, your family has been a part of that violence, you can get help. That's what the basketball did. It drew them in.
So did it work? How many people, I know it's very hard to estimate a crowd at a place like that, but how many people do you think attended?
Well, we got an official count of about 2,500.
That's pretty amazing.
It was spectacular.
For a Saturday.
It was for that Saturday. There were some things going on that Saturday as well, and it was a long event. It's from 11 to 8 p.m. And so we knew we would have waves of people, but it was pretty spectacular. The vendors said they talked to a lot of people. People were engaged, whether they were going to volunteer or needed the help, and so the mission was definitely accomplished.
Yeah, I saw. The city had several booths. I know Youth Education and Families was there. Teen Center was there.
That's right.
And so it wasn't even just about violence, but resources for families and resources for youth, because we could all use, those places to connect and think positive things to keep the kids busy.
If we talk about violence, we have to talk about how to prevent violence, and then if violence is happening, how do we intervene with intervention, and then how do we recover from it? And so the Community Action Coalition, which was led by Steve Brown, which was really the big head of and brain of this deal. That's really what he wanted to focus on, and that's what those vendors represented. They represented prevention, intervention, and recovery.
So in terms of the basketball, and I think I watched part of a game between, it was the police and the sheriff's department, and there's a little rivalry there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
The crowd was very partisan. You know, you were either brown or you were blue.
That's right.
In that
That's
audience.
right.
But, you know, how did it go on some of the other games? I know that there was, you know, did some of the youth and the officials, the firefighters, the sheriffs, the police, did they interact? Was there beginnings maybe of understanding or relationships there?
Absolutely, I think so. I think when you're playing, when you're whether a Boo Williams team or Boys and Girls Club, and you're playing the police or you're playing the fire, typically, especially in some of the urban communities, the mindset towards the police can be negative.
Yeah.
But when you're playing them in basketball and you realize, hey, these are just regular guys. They love basketball like I love basketball. I think it takes away maybe some of the stigma, the us versus them.
Right, and they're not in uniform. You know, they're wearing a blue T-shirt.
That's it.
Yeah.
And what's even cool is you do see their uniform guys on the side, but the uniform guys are rooting.
Yeah, they were. The police chief was there.
The police chief was there, absolutely. So now the guys in uniform, you're not just seeing them pull you over or in some kind of a situation where you know, somebody's being arrested, but now they're on the side being fans. And it makes it more human. The police become a little bit more human. And I think that's just another indirect benefit of the event. So definitely.
So what next?
What next? Well, that's...
This is, you know, it's a long-term, change is a very, very long-term proposition.
Absolutely.
And I think we have to be careful to keep doing things as this was, but to also not burn ourselves out.
Absolutely. Right now, that event really was not meant to solve every problem.
It can't, absolutely.
One event can't, and events can't. Really, relationships can. And so that was the start of building relationships with the community, with those that want to. Right now, the Men of Valor have come together and we're planning another event. And this will be something that'll be a little bit more community-based, a little bit more that deals with training, that deals with teaching and education, the things that we feel in order to prevent violence, to stop violence, these are some of the things that need to be addressed. So that's what's next. And with some of the organizations such as Life Power or True Beginnings or some of these other organizations that are doing things in the community, they're now making steps. They're now pushing forward. They now have visibility. They're now connecting with people. So it's not even just about Men of Valor or what we're doing, even though we're going to do our part, but the whole community, the whole city has to be engaged. And I think through that event, they were. So now there's a lot of communication, a lot of open lines, a lot of, hey, here's what's going on here. You're covering this, you're covering that, we're covering this. And that's what's starting to happen.
Well, the other thing I noticed, and when my assumption when it started was that Men of Valor was sort of men your age, young men, but not kids. And when I got to the door of that event, I was greeted by probably a dozen teenagers in Men of Valor t-shirts, some male, some female.
That's right.
You know, kids that I know, James Payne, Day Braxton, people who've been on this show who are active, engaged kids in that demographic, but who, you know, are positive examples, and they seem to turn out in force to volunteer and to get involved in this issue.
Well, James Payne is part of the Men of Valor, and so the age range definitely scales. And that's important.
It is.
Because we're reaching not just one type of person, and even though we're called the Men of Valor, it's really not just about men. Of course, as men, we want to address other men, but we want to address women as well. We want to address all the issues that we can in our community, and if we can't address them, we now have partners, we now have connections, we now have, I mean, James organized that whole volunteer section. I could have done that. I've been in high school in years, all right? So, or college. So that was important. But then we have somebody else in our organization that has a totally different reach. That's what being the community, being the village is all about.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you. I look forward to hearing from you and Men of Valor on future events and ways that we can all partner together. And in the meantime, we're going to stop here, but we are going to turn to some video because we had a videographer there during the basketball tournament and the related events, and we're going to take you there. So in case you missed it, this will be a taste of what that day was like. Thank you.
As the Chief of Police for the City of Hampton, it's important for me to recognize and for all of our officers to recognize that preventing crime and solving crime is a task that we cannot do without the community's help. In fact, we need to be true partners with the community to ensure that we're doing everything we can to prevent crime. Events and organizations such as what's going on here today at the Boo Williams complex, sports complex, is critical for us to do in conjunction with the community, with many other organizations, in our efforts to prevent violence. Violent acts that are committed, particularly by young people, are the result of many, many factors. We recognize as police officers that we cannot solve all of these problems alone. It's very complex problems that really require complex solutions. Many societal problems, problems with families, problems with educational background, and many, many other things that contribute to violence in our community. This is a great event, starting off here with this coalition of groups coming together to start the conversation, continue the conversation where it needs to go, and recognize that only by working together can we stop violence, can we make Hampton the most livable city in the world, and continue to move forward.